in the last lesson that top-level employers have been using behavioral or competency-based interviewing since the 1970s. It's considered one of the most effective ways to predict on-the-job performance. In this lesson, you'll learn a good strategy for structuring answers to these questions. The strategy is called the STAR method, STAR: situation, task, action, results. Using this structure ensures your answers are specific and have enough detail for the interviewer to assess the competencies that the hiring organization is looking for. In the first step, you describe the situation. You set the context. The context provides the specific background information that an interviewer needs to make sense of your story. Where and when does the story take place? The situation does not have to be from work. You can use examples from community service, hobbies, internships, classes, school projects, team activities, really anything. But your examples should be recent. There are organizations that require candidates to give examples of behaviors demonstrated within the last year. That's all the more reason to keep your story file up to date. In the second step, you describe the task or target. What was necessary to improve the situation or handle the problem? Go into detail and identify the specific aspects of the situation you focused on and why you focused on that outcome. The two steps, S and T, mark the beginning of your story. They should take up no more than 25% of your answer. That means about 30 seconds, based on an overall response time of roughly 2, perhaps 3 minutes. In the third step, you describe the specific actions you took to meet the challenge of the given situation. This is the middle of your story, the meat of your story. Every good story has action, ups and downs, setbacks, conflicts, failures, struggles. A good story should be interesting and full of action. Your telling of the story should be professional, but at the same time, your personality should come through. What did you do? Why did you do it? How did you do it? Who was involved? The action is where you gain experience, where you learn lessons. The action is where you give the interviewer something to remember you by. In the fourth step of your story, you talk about the results, the outcomes of your actions, and the difference your actions made. This is the resolution of your story. What happened? What was accomplished? It doesn't have to be a fairy tale ending where everyone lives happily ever after, but your story needs a resolution. Even if things didn't work out, what did you learn? In a business story, the best results are those that can be quantified. You, the hero of the story, saved the day and won millions for the organization. The idea is that quantifiable results communicate proven competencies. That's the STAR or STAR technique. Use this framework to tell your stories. Keep in mind that an interviewer is looking for specific examples that demonstrate competencies relevant to the position. Your answers should be in the 2 to 3 minute range. No rambling, no going off on tangents. So you have two key decisions to make in your storytelling. What you leave in, what you leave out. It doesn't matter whether you're making a movie, writing a novel, or telling a business story. What to leave in and what to leave out are the key questions. This line from the classic TV show Dragnet says it best. You want to give your interviewer the details he or she needs, but no more. The most important lesson for your stories? Any story is improved if you cut away the fat. Keep your responses concise and to the point. In using the STAR technique, you are following principles of good storytelling that go back to Aristotle. Namely, all stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Yours should be no different. But good stories are more than that. The most memorable have some element of unexpectedness that arouses interest in the listener and creates anticipation. So how do you create that? Storytellers use many devices, but a simple way is to start with the unexpected. It could be with the people involved, the action, or the result. For example, the people involved might include an unusual character that arouses the listener's curiosity. Perhaps a surprising person made a key contribution. Maybe the action taken was unusual. It might demonstrate creative thinking. Or there was an unanticipated side effect that turned out to be important, and your ability to recognize that was key. The result of the action might have been surprising. It might speak to an important lesson you learned. Or you might have pursued one direction and ended up taking a different one because you were flexible enough to change course. You can build anticipation by starting with a line like, "You wouldn't expect that by simply changing how you describe what you're currently doing would have a $2 billion impact on the bottom line, but that's exactly what happened." Or, "We thought that we had the best in-class method for handling risk, but we learned the truth from the most unlikely source." Lines like these are known as hooks in the trade because of the effect they have on a listener. If you're really interested in crafting good stories, then I can recommend any or all of these 3 books, or simply search for business storytelling on Amazon. Keep in mind that many behavioral questions try to get at how you responded to an adverse situation. You had to complete a big project on a small budget. You had to deal with a client's request to meet a tight deadline. You had an unexpected event that upset plans and you had to get things back on track. So as you build your story file, look for situations where things didn't turn out smoothly, as well as situations where they did. A good rule of thumb is that half your stories should be positive, where you met goals, the client was happy, your organization prospered. The other half should be situations that started out negatively, but you made the best of them. Or even better, you managed to bring about a positive outcome. By this point, you might be wondering how many stories you need. You might be thinking, "Wow, there are so many questions that could be asked. How can I have stories for them all?" If you go back over the last year, you should be able to find, hopefully, at least one accomplishment per month, or one problem you overcame, or one situation you had to work through. That shouldn't be too hard. You can then pick examples to reflect various competencies. Remember what we talked about when we introduced the story file back in the first course. Sure, it takes upfront time to build the file from scratch, but once you've got it in place, keeping it up to date shouldn't be so hard. If you get into the regular discipline of documenting your accomplishments, maybe even keeping a business journal, most of the work is done for you. You'll find in the readings examples of behavioral questions you can use to start shaping your stories. Then look at the skills listed in the job posting. Find stories that illustrate your competencies in those areas. If you're genuinely qualified, that shouldn't be too hard. In the next lessons, you'll hear example responses to 3 of the most common behavioral interview questions. In the last lesson of this module, you'll get tips to help you position your competencies to meet the needs of the hiring organization.